Hello, welcome to the Gordy and Gubbs Podcast. We've had a little bit of a break, but I'm John Gubber, and over in Seattle is my friend Gordon. How are you, Gordon?
Very well, John. Thank you. A big hand for myself, but other than that, yeah, very well.
A round of applause there for Gordon Hill in Seattle.
Oh, yes. Thank you very much. Yeah, round of applause.
Okay, so welcome to our new style of podcast. Totally unscripted. We haven't really rehearsed what we're going to talk about. Got some bullet points of things that we would like to talk about. I've just mentioned to Gordon before we came on air that a couple of local stories here that have been reported in the UK. A couple of the newspapers are reporting that the whole Manchester United squad is up for sale. I think there's possibly 3 players who are untouchable. Højlund, Garnacho and Mainoo, the 3 untouchables. Some would say perhaps the skipper, Bruno Fernandes. What do you think, Gordon, about who are the players that we should be keeping hold of, or do you think they're all up for sale if the price is right?
Very good question, that, John. I'm keeping in touch with different various news outlets and seeing what the transfers are and everything else. And 15 players are going to be, leaving the summer, and only 4 are going to be kept. So the 3 that you mentioned, and obviously Fernandes could be the other one. It doesn't shock me because every day we're looking at different transactions, news, transfer speculations. The club is, really throwing out stories left, right, and centre. So it doesn't surprise me that 15 players are up. It surprises me that we're making it known that there are problems and major problems. And so I think Jim has got his hands full. Jason Wilcox and Jason, I know Jason, he'll have his hands full to seeing what's going to be replaced.
I mean, of course, I've worked in the media all my life, and I think you always have to read between the lines when you have these stories, because there's always a certain element of newspapers, what I call kite flying. They guess what the story is going to be. Sometimes there is information that's leaked out to the media from the football clubs. You're never really sure until things happen what's going to happen. But we all know Manchester United's had a horrible season, so we all know that United need to make some changes.
Yeah, I think everybody except the board or Jim and the people that he's hired are on trial. They're seeing who they can replace. I think John Murtock went about 2 weeks ago. I think he's saying thank you, but no thank you. Thanks for your service and bits and pieces. I mean, the turmoil that's been around the club has been around players wanting to go, players not, being injured and, taking money left, right and centre for doing nothing. So I think that he's got a very big task on his hands, and whoever he wants to get rid of, he'll get rid of, and whoever he wants to bring in, John, he'll bring in. But, I go on my Twitter and I'll be very honest that I talk about the games that I'm looking at now. I don't look at the future. I look at how they're playing now. I reflect and comment on how they're playing now. And I look and see what I would do if I was in that position. And it's a very difficult task for anybody. So you get supporters, giving their view, saying they should do this. You can't. And then if it gets through to the players, and I can tell you for a fact, if it gets through to them, they become nervy. They become very, very suspect about, is he going to get rid of me? Does he want me? Is he going to go? Are we getting a new man? Are we going? I mean, the speculation around Ten Hag's the same, John.
Absolutely. I mean, personally, I'd like to see Erik Ten Hag get more time, because he's 2 years into a 3-year programme. I mean, if we are in the cup final, that's 3 cup finals in 2 years. If he does win the FA Cup, it will be a massive boost for the football club, and it will be 2 trophies. He'll be the first Manchester United manager to win 2 trophies in his first 2 seasons. So even though we've had a horrible season, I think perhaps Erik Ten Hag has paid the price of possibly overachieving in his first season and people expecting things to happen too quickly. And Jim Ratcliffe has said from the start, don't expect overnight success, because I think the thing that has really pleased me, and I think a lot of fans, is the fact that people like Gary Neville and other experts have been saying for a long time that the football clubs need to change things from the top to the bottom. And it starts at the top. So we've got rid of Richard Arnold, we've got rid of John Murtock, bringing these new guys. So it looks like they're putting a whole new structure in place. And the thing what I'd like to say really is that over the last 2 decades, where the football club has really fallen down has been recruitment. And that is the biggest thing that we have to tackle now. So this is going to be the first real big test if the guys are all properly in situ, where we've got a transfer window where the new regime can try and start getting the recruitment right. But what I'm more optimistic about is the fact that we've got the best academy in the world still. And it's getting the balance right between the young players. I know you're a developer, you develop young talent. Getting the balance right between the players coming through, the Garnachos, the Mainus and the rest of them, and then making the signings on top to blend the two together. And that's, for me, is getting that right is going to be absolutely paramount, isn't it?
You hit the nail on the head when you said that the academy. I mean, if you look at a club, doesn't matter what club it is in the Premiership or any club around the world, or even with what I do with developing, I get 100 players, and then I end up at the end of the day with maybe 4 or 5 of these players that are pushing their way through to the next level of the game. United a bigger structure. They're doing exactly the same. Hello, John.
I think we froze for about 5 seconds, but we are coming live from Seattle, so that's not too bad.
Yeah, sorry about that. A big jumbo just flew over. But no, the situation is that the club have got an academy structure that is well sorted, well looked after. You got the right people going into the right places. You're developing them, and it's like I said, when you're developing a young player, you might get 100 players that you go through, and maybe 1 or 2 will make that. Most pro clubs, if they get 1 or 2 coming through, will be able to put them into the first team, and that's value for money, so to speak. But United are now trying to connect the dots, so to speak, youth with the first team. But the ultimate is the first team, and how good is that first team? Because United have got such a reputation, they are such a powerful club that they've got to be competing with the best. We have to compete with the best. We have to be going for the best. But they got to be the right players at the right time and not just spending money willy-nilly because somebody becomes available.
Absolutely. One of the things that encouraged me the most is when Sir Jim Ratcliffe said he doesn't want to buy Kylian Mbappe because he said that's too easy. He'd rather discover the next Kylian Mbappe. So for me, I like the fact that we want to focus more on developing homegrown talent. We've obviously proved that we can do it over the decades. I mean, going back to the Busby Babes and Duncan Edwards and Bobby Charlton, all the way through class of '92. We've had other players, of course, like your Mark Hugheses and your Norman Whitesides, and now you've got the current crop coming through. We've always been great at bringing the kids through, and I think what it tells us, no matter how many players are actually for sale, it's actually a sign of how the game's changing, because financial fair play now is becoming a big factor. And I think that leads us on to the other thing that I wanted to ask you about, because over the last 24 hours, the Premier League have talked about salary caps, and it kind of goes hand in hand, really, because football clubs now have got to really focus on how to make sure they're not making such a big loss that they put the football clubs in jeopardy. And do you think salary caps can work?
It seems to have its pros and cons. Salary cap is great at keeping clubs with a level so that clubs can't overspend and go out and buy players left, right and centre. It's favourable for the clubs, not favourable for the player, because the player obviously wants to get as much as he possibly can. So there you're going to be in toe-to-toe fighting with the PFA, because the PFA will want their players to negotiate. But you've got to draw a line somewhere. It's always been that players have always looked at their bonuses as making up their money. And, and my time and in Fergie's time and in, other managers' times, it's, well, okay, fine. You're virtually giving the player as much as possibly the transfer is. And so when you have that and you don't have that drive is missing. Just goes into my bank and I'm already on 500, 400, 300,000 a week now. So it doesn't really matter. And I think that is why I think it goes, and it's funny to explain, but you can see why the young kids that come through haven't got anything, want to prove a point, want to go out and bust their butt to get what the big boys are getting. Once they get it, it seems to die a little. And then basically they're set where if you bring in a salary cap, and then I would say add incentives to it, so that if you play, I mean, former pros that I played with, former friends of mine, that we talk about it when we're off scene and and when we're just sitting down talking, and we say, yeah, when you talk about, well, I'm on £40 a point, or I'm on £100 a point, or I get £1,000 if I win the FA Cup. Now it's like, well, they win the FA Cup, and that demeans the FA Cup a little bit, but it also pushes the player to say, well, okay, we won the FA Cup, that's it. And it's well, I'm still getting my 350 grand, whether I'm playing or not. And that, to me, just a little bit far out for me. Sometimes I can't comprehend it. And people write on the Twitters, they don't understand where we come from when we talk about the players now, and we look at players and we look at the drive in that player. Not what he's getting, not what he's driving, not where he lives, but the way that player performs and gives and says, well, tell you what, this player, and people talk about it now, and we've seen it with players, John. And I think that's what Sir Jim and his management team are seeing as well. Jason Wilcox will be able to see it as well. And that you've got to then go for that player that's going to be everything for you. And I think the incentives have got to come back into the game, where the club, if it don't reach it, they're not out of pocket.
I understand how you want to try and motivate players by having incentives, but the game is so far different money-wise to what it was when you were playing, because, you were far, far removed. You were in a totally different ball game regarding figures, because when you used to get bonuses, it really meant something. I feel now football players getting so much money, it doesn't really mean anything apart from bragging rights. I'm getting more than you, because correct. I can't believe once you get £100,000 a week, £200,000 a week, £300,000. I mean, what's the difference? I mean, can you not live on £100,000 a week? I'm sure anybody who played in your era, they would have quite happily played for £100,000 a week.
That would have been £100,000. That would have been a 4-year contract. For 4 years would have been 100 grand, 25 grand a year. But then you tally up all your bonuses, and I'm not going back in time. I'm not telling people, oh well, this is yesterday. No, I'm not. It's just what I am looking at and feeling and seeing as a former player, what these players are giving and what they're not giving, and how the game has been tailored to them and today's football. Do I like watching it? No, I don't like watching it. But I will watch it to see what these players are doing in today's, and I keep up with all the news. But I say it as I see it, John. And if a club's not doing well, I will say the club's not doing well. And at the moment of time, it's a horrific time for everybody. And all the supporters, they write into me, and that when I say something, it's from my heart that I feel it. It's not that I'm bearing malice against the club, bearing malice against what they get. And remember, we pioneered for them to get more money. Then the Robsons pioneered to get them for more money. Ferguson's squad pioneered, the first £1,000 a week player, first 2,000. All of a sudden, it's not gone from that. It's gone to 100 and 150. And it's what the clubs are willing to pay to get those good players, those top players. But sometimes those top players are not ready-made for a club, which we've seen at United. The players are bought, not a United player, but because they would become available. And it's like a vicious roundabout.
I go back to what you said earlier, really, because you talked about when the young players come through, they're not corrupted by money. They're playing because they want to get into the team. They want to be successful. They want to be having successful careers. And I just feel with football, at whatever angle you look at it from, it's kind of been corrupted by money. It's become all about money rather than about glory. And I feel that back in your day, obviously players were motivated by bonuses, etc. Any normal person would be. But in those days, I think there was much more passion for the football club that you paid for, and you were doing it for the glory as much as the money. Whereas now I feel it's become very much a job, and the players that really love the football club and love the game, they're getting less and less, because it really is about, they're getting so much money that sometimes I think when the game's too hard, it's easy to give up and say, well, I'm getting my money, I'll just come back next week. You know, I mean,
exactly.
we want, as fans, we want to see players that fight for the shirt. And also, I think a lot of fans these days, you have to remember, are going through hard times. I mean, we're going for, I'm not sure, it's not technically a recession, I don't think. I'm not an expert in politics, but everybody's hard up at the moment. And when we see these footballers getting paid astronomical wages and they don't win, and sometimes they don't look like they're trying, that's the thing that really grates with football fans.
I can totally sympathise with the supporters and the fans, because they pay good money to get into the ground, into their seats, watch the game, hopefully get in something from their team. What I think what is missing is, if United all of a sudden, started to win games with attacking football, everybody would be, oh, this is great, this is great. But you have to have the downs in football to appreciate the ups. So when you've had the run of the mill, so to speak, league results that have been up and down like a yo-yo, then all of a sudden, you get a result and you're in the FA Cup final where you shouldn't have been in the FA Cup final, but you get there. But that's gone. That's water under the bridge. Now what they've got to do is look forward to a spectacular game, Man City, Man United, and Manchester Derby being played at Wembley. Man City on song, United struggling, trying to find form. Will it be a one-off? I mean, the FA Cup can throw that, because when we were playing for the FA Cup, Southampton came and beat us. They were the underdogs. And that's what the FA Cup throws at you. So if United do well and win the FA Cup, that'll be a feather in Eric's cap. He'll be able to say, well, okay, fine. Will the pressure release? But he's still got that situation of, you got another season to come forward. And now you've got players there that certainly aren't United calibre, but you're asking them at this moment in time to go out and do something against Man City. So you're asking on one hand, please play, don't hold back, because you've got 2 games left and then the cup final. When you reach the cup final, you have the tendency to take your foot off the pedal a bit. You don't want to be injured. You don't want to not have good form, so to speak. And that's basically what happens. And so it's going to be up and down for the next month or so until the FA Cup's over. And then obviously day by day, and I'm following the news, I follow United's news and all the players. Be interesting, to be honest with you, John, to see who's coming, who's going, what's happening. But I think the roundabout's going to be very busy.
Absolutely. I like what you say about the FA Cup, because I remember obviously when you won the FA Cup, but you came on the back of, you won the FA Cup on the back of losing it the previous season. So there is a small parallel there this time round, where we lost the FA Cup last time and we're going back, but this time we're not going back as favourites for sure. But that's the beauty of the FA Cup. I mean, I think fans still love the FA Cup, but it's been devalued because of what we talked about before, money, and the money that can be made from the Champions League and the Premier League seems to dwarf the FA Cup. And we saw that with losing the FA Cup replays, which have all been thrown out now. And that's all about, for me, it's all about making room for the Super League, whatever form that may take, whether it's an enlarged Champions League or another Super League that's going to come in the future. It seems to be about making room in the calendar, but the big clubs always find room in the calendar to have these pre-season tours, and you'll get rid of some games and they'll bring other games to make more money. So it seems a little bit hypocritical, really. But I was just looking on Twitter, and there was a quote from Bruno Fernandes, and he says, if you want me to be very honest, if I have to think about not continuing in the Premier League, it won't be until after the Euros, because nothing will be able to take my focus away from the FA Cup and the Euros. Possibly not the best English there, but I think what he's saying there is that he's almost forgotten about the Premier League, and he's really focused on the FA Cup final, because the reality is, I've got this vision that, we could end up going into the FA Cup final. I'd like to see Arsenal win the Premier League, and if they do, it's going to be a winner takes all in the FA Cup. And if we can beat City in the FA Cup final, you could have this remarkable situation where we've had an awful season, we win the FA Cup, and we win more than Man City, who won the treble last year.
But that's football. That's the beauty of the FA Cup. That's the beauty of the league. I mean, we've got the people behind the scenes, or we don't see, who supposedly know the game, and I'm not talking about players or the managers. I'm talking about people that are in, the directors' places, and that they know absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
And what they do is they look to say, we need the survival of the club for us to be able to play in this cup, or go to Europe. The higher you get, it's like, well, now it's become Europe, and the money, and all of a sudden the European Cup, the International European League, which has been branded around, and it frustrates you, because they're saying, well, okay, clubs can't handle it, the schedules are too much at this moment, yet they've got 24 players, John, to choose from. They're one of the biggest clubs, and they say, well, we've got a couple of players that we could put on. You've got 24 players. You surely must have them at a calibre that can play in the Premiership, not just 11, not just 12 as we had. But you've got players there that you can change, and you change. If you watch the such substitutions over the seasons and over the years, they've gone up from 2 to 3. All of a sudden now, you can change 3-4 players, and you've got 24 to pick from, and everybody say, oh, the schedule and the injuries. Well, that's part and parcel of football. But what you're looking at is to say, well, okay, fine. Managers now say, well, I've got injuries. You've got 24 players. If you can't put a successful team on that field from 24 players that you have, then I hold my hands up and say, I tell you what, you're doing something wrong then if you can't have it. You must have somebody to replace somebody. You must have somebody if they're injured or sent off. You must have someone in reserve that can do just as good a job. And then what happens then? The consistency of the game goes. You change it, or wrong substitution, or you should have done this, or you should have done that. All of a sudden, John, the game goes the other way, because you've taken away the consistency. There's no consistency. 11 this week. We played with 11 every week for nearly 60 games. You get to know the player. You get to know how he runs. You get to know this. Some of these players I see are being played in different positions. Surely that should be done on the training field. 24 players, they should be groomed to be able to play. They get enough money for it now to be groomed, to be playing in different positions so that they can, and at the same standard. Yes, you're going to get your special players, but that to me is a problem for me. Squads are 24. If you can't put a good team out there, I shake my head.
I think that's the difference between United and City, because we've kind of spent similar amounts of money, to be honest. And City have got so much stronger squad than us, and that goes back to the recruitment. And we spent like £1 billion plus on players, and we haven't got the same strength of squad that Man City have got. So it's really, we've reached a point now where it's almost like we've maxed out the credit card and we can't make mistakes. So we've got to make sure that the new regime, the new recruitment department, are going to make good decisions going forward. So that's going to be absolutely crucial. But I do feel that to be honest, I do look forward to the pre-season games, and one of the things I think we should say is that counting down over the next few months, we're going to be getting Gordy Gubbs Stateside to be telling us when things are happening over there, because we've got the countdown to the 2026 World Cup, the FIFA World Cup. We've got the next year, 2025, we've got the enlarged 32-team Club World Cup. It's going to be the first Club World Cup of that size. So I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that goes down and what the anticipation is and the preparation for that over in America, because I do feel that the American game is really, this is the time for football, soccer as they call it in America, because the MSL has done quite well. We've had Messi over there, and there's a lot more attention now. We've got the Welcome to Wrexham, which is owned by the American Hollywood guys, and I think generally football seems to be a lot more interesting to the American public. But one thing I'd like to mention, I've just mentioned that as a sort of like a tease, really, for the fact that you're hopefully going to give us some information and views about what's happening in the countdown to these American events over the next couple of years. And but meantime, you'll be coming the opposite way, because I think I'm hoping to be in, where is it? 27th of July, Man United play Arsenal in Los Angeles, but you're going to be coming the opposite way to Bollington United. Tell us about your soccer school in July and what's going to be happening there.
Yes, I've got some young kids that obviously in my centre of excellence, and what I'm doing is I'm bringing these youngsters over to have a week with the Bollington United under 8s, under 9s, under 12s, under 16s. I'm bringing some players over to actually get the culture of the English game and let the American kids see this, and then I will be leading it off in July. I think it's July the 23rd, 4th, 5th and 6th, so it's 4 days. I will be in Bollington, and I will be taking that clinic, and it's nice because I can see both cultures. You know, I know what the American culture is in the game. I know there's only about 3 top cities here that really produce, or not produce, but have a following of football, so to speak. That's Florida, California, and New Jersey. So you've got East, West, you know, and you just have to look at the audience that are actually, you know, like 600,000 maybe in Florida, 400,000 in California. But the game is growing from when it first came, when I came over, and I helped pioneer it with the likes of Pele, Beckenbauer, Cruyff, Bestie. You can't ask for any better to come and push the game. What they've done now is the American scene has changed a little bit, and they've gone a little bit back to that by saying, okay, let's bring over Messi, and then see, it won't change the game because the game is still American football. That's their sport. So what you're doing is you're competing with it in terms of audience, TV. And so when you get a World Cup coming to the States and Canada and Mexico you don't have to worry about because they all support the game of football, soccer. But when you're introducing it to people that are looked at, for instance, NFL football, that's all hand-eye coordination. Baseball, eye-hand coordination. Basketball, eye-hand coordination. We've introduced a game that is eye-foot coordination. And that is completely different. That has to be mastered. And so now you've got a lot of the young generation now watching that, playing it at school and at different clubs. And now what's happening is they're starting to make moves. And I said a few years ago, it'll only be a matter of time before American kids go across to Europe, but they've got to go at an early age to learn the culture. That's why I'm taking these kids to Bollington United to see some of the potential stars of the future from England and America get together, and it's nice to be able to bridge that gap. And you're looking at maybe the next generation of players. So the trip to me, Bollington United, it's, you know, as I said, I've been connected with them. I lived in Bollington. The famous White Nancy is the big. I always love looking at the White Nancy because I used to take my dog, my Old English, for a walk up there. And so it'll be brilliant. 23rd, 24th, 26th of July at Bollington, and you can get it through bollingtonunited.co.uk.
I'm looking at the website now. It's bollingtonunited.co.uk. It says Bollington United Football Club, Soccer School, Soccer School Summer 2024 with Gordon Hill, the former professional footballer who played for Manchester United from 1975 to 1978. 23rd, 24th, 25th and 27th of July. What I wanted to ask Gordon was, I know you've been running courses, you've been bringing kids over from America, boys and girls, for many, many years now. Have you seen an improvement over that time, or an improvement in quality, or an improvement in enthusiasm for the game?
What I've noticed is that the kids don't want to come back.
Don't want to come back to America?
They don't want. They want to play there, and when they come back, the first thing you do is say, "Well, wow," that's the thing that comes out. Wow, and that is, you're seeing the English kids that every single kid wants to be a professional, and he goes out and plays like that.
They want to stay in England. They don't want to come back to America. Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly right. They want to play, and then when they do come back, then they look at what they're playing with. And so they're asking questions, which is fabulous. And that's the development stage. And I think that development stage is they're asking more for what they can give here. So then you now transfer it. The caliber of coaching has got to go up, has to go up. But at the moment, it stays there. Well, okay, fine, you're playing, but you play a European team and you most probably get your butt kicked. And it's slowly changing. You're going to get some American teams go over and do very well indeed. But there's another level to it. So it's a pyramid in any club. You'll have 100 at the bottom in your development. You'll get, say, 25, 30 of them come through. And then a couple of years later, you'll get 10. And then at the top of it, you'll get 2. And it's like any club. Man United is no different. They'll pick out kids from all over the world and narrow it down until they've got the best. And that's why it's the best system. And I'd like to congratulate them because they won the under-18 Cup, which is fantastic. And so development side of it is, I enjoy the development side of it, John, more than anything else, because I can see them and they are making progress here in the States. But, it's a long road. I can't put kids in a microwave and press the button and in 2 seconds I've got a player. Doesn't happen.
I know when you bring them over, you give them a good education. You don't just go to Bollington United. You do take them to places like Old Trafford and other league clubs up and down the pyramid. So you try to give them an overview, I think, when you bring them over here. And it's something that I guess it's so different than what they see in America, because in America, of course, it's pay to play, isn't it?
Well, it's a pay-to-play system. And again, it's the money. The real good, tough, next world players are at the bottom. They can't afford it, and it's sad, but you pay to play, and and the poor kids that can't, I try to help them out as much as I can, but it's only a certain amount, certain much I can do. But it's nice to see a kid with the enthusiasm, argues at you because he wants to do this, and you know that he's got the passion, and he's got the drive. All we have to do is, work with him, give him the tools, and let him go and run with it. And that's all development.
With it being pay to play in America, I guess it's inevitable that there must be a lot of good players who never get a chance. So is there any way that you can try and discover those kids, or are they just basically lost because of the system? You've got to change the system to find those players and not lose them to the game?
Those good players, believe it or not, will pick another sport because they're good at the game soccer, right? A good young player, and they can pick up a baseball bat, basketball, a football, and try to look at that way. I mean, because you look at the States is a multitude of sports. That's it. They say, well, he's an athlete. I'm not searching for an athlete. I'm searching for a footballer, to develop a footballer. But the athlete may be able to do athletics. And what I've just said. So it's sometimes you look at it and say, tell you what, this kid's a good kid, but will he get a chance to be able to? And you try to get in there and help him. But at the end of the day, John, it's what I said before. It's the money that stops it. And it's a shame. It's a shame. But You
Money's
know,
there all the way through, isn't it? So do you
yeah,
think
it
there'll ever
is.
be a day when it'll change in America where young players won't have to pay to play? Or do you think it's just built into the culture of the game over there and that's the way it will always be? Or do you think maybe one day that it could change?
It's built in the culture. It's built in the culture, John. I don't think it will unless you get a 150, 200 millionaires that want to do it just because they want to do it. I mean, they look at it, they're going to get a very big excitement, and I think the audiences will go through the roof when the World Cup comes here. I mean, I can guarantee you there's going to be 6 to 8 games at the stadium here in Seattle. They're going down to, they're going up to Vancouver. They're going to California, and then they're going across to the East Coast, and then they're going to Dallas. So the venues are spread out. But the most fascinating one is there's no stadium or no football team, soccer team in San Francisco, yet they get the World Cup venues. And if there's money, there's got to be new competitions. If there's new competitions, there's going to be more money. If there's more money, there's got to be more games. If there's more games, there's got to be bigger squads, and, we've seen it. And now people are saying, well, let's get a salary cap. How much is a salary cap? It's mind-boggling to what people and what these directors and that really want from the game, and it's sad. I mean, I take my hat off to Brian Reynolds, who's got Wrexham, who's done a great job over there, but he's used the TV side of it to be able to get what he wants. And
Absolutely.
he's gone out with it, and everybody's seen it, and it lights up for a couple of weeks. This is fantastic, and I enjoy watching it because I know where Wrexham come from, and I love the story, But once you start losing pounds, shillings, and pence, then you have to start thinking very seriously: can I sustain this? And that's, I take my hat off. And Brian, you've done a fantastic job. They're even lining up tours of the States as well.
You remind
So,
me of Jack Charlton sometimes, Gordon, when you get people's names wrong, because it's Ryan, not Brian. It's Ryan Reynolds, isn't it?
Brian,
The film
yeah,
star.
Ryan
Ryan
Reynolds.
with an R.
Ryan
One,
Reynolds,
one,
yeah.
you mentioned all those venues for the World Cup, and one I'd like to mention because I'm going over there next month, and we still need to sell some tickets, and we get back to that subject of money. But I'm taking Yap Stam over to Toronto, and it's one of the World Cup venues, so I'm interested in seeing finding out firsthand what the appetite for football is in Canada at Toronto, because it's going to be, I think they're going to be hosting the first match in Canada during the World Cup in 2026. And you, of course, played in Canada. What's the comparison like between playing in the States and playing in Canada?
The Canadians are very, very receptive to European football, and they will welcome it with open arms. And, obviously their national game is hockey. So you're looking at the audience side of it that can reflect a little bit on the football side of it because it's, a dog eat dog, fight. And so you're seeing the winning mentality right away through that system in Canada. I was up there and I coached in Montreal, and we had so many Europeans in Montreal because it's very, very diverse. We had a great audience of Europeans, but they love their football. And in the States they love their football, but it's the audience that are, like, for instance, in a certain area. You might get the German sector, you might get the Italian sector, and you might get the Chinese, and and these different sectors in that city that oh great. Mexico, you'll get everybody supporting Mexico. They'll be out in force. That's football. Canada, you'll get them out because they've got the World Cup and they've got a couple of venues there. Vancouver is a gorgeous city. You'll have Toronto, that's a fantastic place. You got Montreal as well, which is very cosmopolitan. But then you come to the States and you're looking at stadiums that are NFL stadiums. So you'll get the audience to say, well, I don't understand the game.
It's a simple game, though, isn't it? Football's a simple game, isn't it, compared to American football?
It's a simple game complicated by coaches. It's as simple as that. And basically, John, it will be that one thing that will happen, and I can promise everybody, it will be a spectacle. It will be always a fantastic spectacle. They will be able to put it on with flying colours. And of course, where's the final being played?
It's got to be in America somewhere. Remind me.
New York?
Oh, New York, crikey. Well, I'm starting off in New York on the way to Toronto, so I'll be getting my first proper taste of New York.
After you might have to stay. I think it's at the Giants Stadium. I played in the Giants Stadium, and I'll be honest with you. On a lighter note, I've played in Chicago. I've played in all these big towns, all these big cities, football stadiums before they were soccer, right? And I go into Chicago into the stadium there, which was like a Roman Colosseum, and I went in, and I went the first time I went out, and Bill Folks was with me, and Bill said, "You'll be surprised at what's there." Now this is 100,000 seat plus, okay? And I walk out and I look at this Coliseum, and I went, "Holy!" And the field's AstroTurf, and it's got a little bit of a bank on it, you know. And I looked at it, and I turned and I went, "Bill, where's the fans?" And he went, "Turn round," and they were sitting all by there was about 3,000 of them sitting by the tunnel, waiting for us to come out. And I went, "Oh my gosh!" And it's the first time I come to the States, and when I played as well, and I went, "Woo!" And everywhere we went, there was cheerleaders, bands. Bill Folks threatened to put a drummer through the wall because he was behind the bench playing this drum so loud. Bill
Yeah,
turned around and said, "If you don't beep," he says, "I'm gonna hit you with it." And it was like, and we'd sit there with the English lads and say, they certainly know how to put on a show, and that's what the World Cup is going to be.
that's the one thing
And
I did
it's
enjoy when I went to America last year. San Diego, the Snapdragon Stadium. It was very sort of like showbizy, and I must admit, I did like all the pre-match razzmatazz. It doesn't kind of sit right or feel right in the UK when we've got a different sort of culture, but it does feel like it's all part of the American experience. And when we went
yes,
to Las Vegas, they played a match at the American football stadium. It was kind of awesome, to be honest. And one thing they do on a massive scale is build super duper stadiums. So I think fans from all over the world will enjoy going to watch the World Cup in America just to
yeah.
experience the fantastic stadiums.
I think the nice thing about it would be the stadiums that they can obviously convert into grass. They got to put it into grass. You can't play on the AstroTurf. That is false. So you've got the World Cup there on grass. The stadiums now are built for their teams, you know. So what's going to happen is that the stadiums are built because if you look at a stadium, you're looking not down at the sidelines, you're looking really to the middle of the field where most of the players. So you're
Mm.
looking at that and the 5 yards, and what got us was the first time was the lines. You got a different colour for the football pitch, and you had a different colour for the NFL. So you'd say, and the referee say 10 yards. Well, that weren't hard because you had a 5 yard, 10 yard line,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
it was a
yeah.
different colour. So you got used to that, but then you look up and one story that I did have is I went to watch Chelsea when I lived in Dallas at the new Jerry Jones Stadium, the Dallas, you know, stadium, and they were. It was just unbelievable. It just built it, and they got escalators up that people at the bottom are saying, "Which suite are you in, sir?" And taking you up to your suite, not like Millwall where they didn't give a monkeys what happened, and it
Cold
was
Blow
like
Lane.
Cold Blow Lane, and it was cold. And so you went up and you got shown to your suite. But this suite had a bathroom in it and a little and seats that reclined, so to speak. So you couldn't. It was built up so you couldn't see the edge of the field because it was built close to the field. And so they said, "Oh, I tell you this," and I went, "Whoa!" And Chelsea played on the AstroTurf, and they put the AstroTurf on top of the concrete. Holy moly, John!
Yeah.
I spoke to Frank, I spoke to John Terry. I spoke to a couple of the boys, and they said we're not going to play on it, and they didn't play on it because as they slid on the new turf, and so what I found is the Americans are very good at putting stuff down, picking it up. If they need an AstroTurf field tomorrow, boom. I played on ice when they put carpet on top of ice, and towards the end of it, the white ice was coming through, and you were slipping. So that was it. And of course, things have got better and better. And now the city have got their stadiums, which has been, and that's really nice progress. But playing on that stuff, and the AstroTurf slide tackling, I tell you what, you've never seen a burn like it. It was just, and it was like sandpaper. But it's sophisticated enough now that the stadiums are built very similar to what we have in the UK to hold a certain amount of people, which is great, and that's what the progress has been in the United States. And of course, everybody that plays on them now, the fields are exactly the same as what we have at home. So it's nice to see that soccer's got its own stadiums. It will have its own audience, and it will be a spectacular, absolutely fantastic.
Looking forward to it. We've run out of time, and I think it's going to be fascinating. I think it's clear from what we've talked about today, even without any scripting and without any pre-organisation, what we're going to talk about, that you've got so much knowledge about football in America, and I think it's going to be fascinating as we count down to these tournaments, the Club World Cup and the Soccer World Cup, the FIFA World Cup in 2026. It's going to be fascinating to have your insight, Gordon. So I'm looking forward to us talking again on many occasions, hopefully, as we count down to the World Cups.
It's going to be a very interesting World Cup, and it's going to be, as I said, I'm not too far away, so I will be keeping tabs on everything and to find out, and it'll be lovely to see, the Europeans and the South American teams come and put on a spectacle, because it will be, as I said, it will be first class. I know that Seattle are very excited. I'm pleased for them. They've got a smashing club, and it'll be very, very pleasing to see that. And then obviously I'll travel out and maybe pop down to California, which is just down the coast. And it's beautiful because you can't get a bus to some of these places. It'll take you 3 days to get there.
Yeah.
So you're in a plane.
Yeah, well, I'm looking forward to it. I like to say I'm looking forward to maybe seeing you at the final in New York, because it sounds like a good destination and a place that we can enjoy a football match.
You fly 6 hours to Toronto, that's to New York, and I'll fly 6 hours, because that's the distance from Seattle to New York, and New York to London, is 6 hours, just over 6 hours.
So we'll meet in the middle then.
Well, you swim and I'll take a car.
Okay. On that thought then, we'll see all the viewers next time, and thanks, Gordon. Thanks for joining us from Seattle.
I look forward to seeing everybody.